The city folded itself into dusk, like a paper bird collapsing into ash. I watched from the window of the abandoned library on 7th Street, where the homeless congregated when the shelters overflowed and the winter bit deep. The glass was cracked in the shape of a spider's web, and through it, the streetlights flickered on one by one, amber beads strung across the throat of the dying day. I had been alive for 943 years. I no longer remembered my birth name. The centuries had worn it smooth, like river stones beneath water, until it dissolved entirely into the current of time. Now I was simply called the King, though I ruled nothing but shadows and the hollow spaces between heartbeats. Once, in lands that no longer existed under names that had been forgotten, I had commanded armies. I had signed treaties in blood, my own and others. I had loved and lost and learned that immortality was not a gift, but a sentence, a slow drowning in the ocean of years. The library smelled of mildew and old paper, of dreams abandoned and words no one would read again. I came here because it reminded me of what I had been before the curse, a scholar, a seeker of truth, a young man who believed knowledge could illuminate the darkness. How naive, how beautifully, tragically naive. I was dying, not the death that mortals knew, the clean severance of soul from flesh. No, I was fading, the way old photographs fade when left too long in sunlight. My power had been slowly leaching away for decades now. Where once I could move through crowds unseen, could bend wills with a whisper, could heal from any wound in moments, now I struggled. A deep cut took hours to close. My thoughts grew sluggish at dawn. The hunger, once a tiger I could master, had become a starving wolf that gnawed at my bones. I had made my peace with it. After 9 centuries, dissolution felt less like an enemy and more like an old friend finally come to carry me home. The others of my kind, those few who remained, had retreated to their strongholds, their mountain fortresses and underground palaces. They drank from willing donors, played at being eternal, surrounded themselves with sycophants and shadows. I had tried that life. For 200 years, I had maintained a court in Prague, in Vienna, in Venice. I had been surrounded by beauty and power and exquisite isolation, so I had walked away. For the past 30 years, I had been wandering, nameless and unnoticed, through the forgotten places of the world, the ruins of Detroit, the empty quarters of Tangier, the abandoned neighborhoods of Liverpool, places where the lost gathered, where no one looked too closely at anyone else, where a man who never aged could disappear into the crowd of those whom the society had already rendered invisible. I dressed in layers of thrift store clothes, a heavy coat that had belonged to someone else, boots held together with duct tape, a wool cap pulled low over my pale hair. I looked like what I was, a ghost haunting the margins of the living world. The door to the library creaked open. I heard the shuffle of footsteps, the rustle of plastic bags, the small sounds of the homeless making their nightly pilgrimage to shelter. I knew most of them by sight now, though I kept my distance. Marcus, who talked to angels only he could see. Old Jenny, who collected bottle caps in a shopping cart. The young couple who were always high, their pupils dark as drowned moons. And her. I had noticed her 3 weeks ago when she first arrived. She was different from the others, quieter, more self-contained. She didn't beg or shout or weep. She simply existed, moving through the space with a strange dignity, as if she were not homeless but simply traveling light. She was perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair that she kept tied back with a piece of string and eyes that were gray as winter seas. She wore an old military jacket several sizes too large and carried everything she owned in a canvas rucksack. She chose a corner far from the others and spread out a thin sleeping bag. Then she pulled out a battered paperback and began to read by the light of a small LED keychain. I found myself watching her. It had been so long since anything had captured my attention, but there was something about her stillness, her self-possession, the way she held herself apart not from fear but from some innate reserve. She reminded me of someone I had known once, centuries ago, though I could no longer remember who. The night deepened. The others settled into sleep or stupor. I remained by the window, as I always did, watching the stars wheel overhead through the cracked glass. I did not sleep anymore. Sleep had left me 200 years ago, another gift of immortality's slow dissolution. I heard her rise. The sound of her footsteps was soft, deliberate. She was moving toward the back of the library, toward the old reading room where I stood. I should have moved away, should have remained invisible, as I had trained myself to be. But something held me there, some curiosity I thought long dead. She appeared in the doorway, her gray eyes finding me immediately in the darkness. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Most mortals could not meet my gaze for long. Some instinct warned them, some animal awareness of predator and prey. But she did not look away. "You're always here," she said. Her voice was low, measured, with a faint accent I couldn't place. "Every night? You never sleep." "Neither do you," I replied. "I sleep, just not much." She stepped into the room, hands in her pockets, her breath misting in the cold air. "I'm Mara." I hesitated. It had been years since anyone had asked my name, since I had offered it. "I'm called Theron," I said finally. It was a name I had used 500 years ago in Byzantium, before it fell. "That's an old name," she observed. "I'm an old man." She smiled slightly. "You don't look old. Looks deceive." She moved to the window, beside me, careful to maintain distance, and looked out at the city. "Why do you come here? To the library, I mean. There are warmer shelters, places with food." "I like the books," I said. "Even abandoned, forgotten books have a kind of company." "I understand that." She was quiet for a moment. "I was a librarian once, before." "Before?" "Before everything fell apart." She didn't elaborate, and I didn't press. Everyone here carried a story of collapse, of the moment when the world betrayed them. "What are you reading?" she asked. I hadn't expected the question. I gestured to the book I had left on the window ledge, a water-damaged copy of Ovid's Metamorphoses in Latin, which I had been rereading for perhaps the 1,000th time. She picked it up, turned it over in her hands. "You read Latin?" "Among other things." "What other things?" "Greek, Arabic, Old French, languages that don't exist anymore." I said it without thinking, then realized my mistake. But she didn't react with suspicion, only interest. "You're a scholar." "I was, a long time ago." "And now?" "Now I'm just a tired man who remembers too much." She looked at me. Then really looked, and I felt something I had not felt in decades, the sensation of being seen. Not as a monster or a myth or a king, but simply as a person, flawed and finite and fallible. "I think," she said slowly, "that you're one of the loneliest people I've ever met. And that's saying something, considering where we are." The truth of it struck me like a blow. I turned away back to the window, to the safety of silence. "I'm sorry," she said. "I shouldn't have—" "No," I interrupted. "You're not wrong." We stood together in the darkness, two strangers bound by the same invisible threads of loss and survival. After a time, she said goodnight and returned to her corner. But something had shifted. Some door I thought permanently sealed had been pushed open, just a crack, letting in a sliver of light. The next night she brought me food, a sandwich from a church outreach, wrapped in wax paper. I tried to refuse, but she insisted. "You look like you haven't eaten in weeks," she said. She had no idea how right she was. I could eat mortal food, but it gave me no sustenance. I existed on blood, and I had been starving myself, trying to accelerate the slow fade into nothingness. I took the sandwich to be polite, and made a show of eating while she watched. The bread tasted like ash, but her kindness tasted like something I had forgotten. We began to talk. Small conversations at first, observations about the others in the library, fragments of poetry we both knew, memories of books we had loved. She was well-read, thoughtful, with a sharp mind that had been weathered but not broken by whatever circumstances had brought her here. She didn't pry into my past, and I didn't pry into hers. We existed in the present in those quiet hours after midnight, when the world belonged only to the lost and the wakeful. I found myself looking forward to those conversations with an intensity that frightened me. It had been so long since I had connected with another soul, had allowed myself to be even partially known. With her, I could almost remember what it felt like to be human. One night, perhaps 3 weeks after we first spoke, I noticed the tremor in my hands as I held a book. It was worsening. The fade was accelerating. I had perhaps months left, maybe less. Mara noticed too. "Are you sick?" she asked, her gray eyes concerned. "In a manner of speaking. You should see a doctor." "No doctor can help me." "Theron?" "It's an old ailment," I said. "I've learned to live with it." But that was a lie. I was learning to die with it. That same night, everything changed. I was standing at my usual place by the window when I heard the door open. But this time, the footsteps were different, deliberate, predatory. I turned, my dulled instincts suddenly screaming warnings. 3 men entered the library. They wore dark clothes and moved with the coordinated precision of hunters. But it wasn't the homeless they were hunting. They were hunting me. I recognized them immediately, though I had never seen them before. Vampire hunters. The descendants of those who had dedicated their lives to eradicating my kind. I had thought myself beneath notice, too faded and forgotten to warrant attention. I had been wrong. The eldest of them, a man with iron gray hair and a face carved from granite, pointed at me. "The king," he said. "I thought you were a myth." "Myths don't die easily," I replied. My hand went to my side, to the small knife I carried. Laughably inadequate, but all I had. "Tonight you do." They moved forward. In my prime, I could have disarmed them all in seconds, could have vanished into shadow, could have bent their minds until they forgot why they had come. But I was so weak now, so desperately, fatally weak. The first one lunged. I managed to deflect the blade, blessed silver naturally. But it grazed my arm, and I felt the burn of the metal against my skin. Silver wounds didn't heal quickly even when I was strong. Now they might not heal at all. The others were circling, cutting off escape routes. The homeless were waking, scrambling away, terrified. All except Mara, who had risen from her corner and was watching with wide eyes. "Run," I told her. "This doesn't concern you." But she didn't run. The gray-haired hunter smiled. "We've been tracking you for months, Your Majesty. Ever since we heard rumors of an ancient wandering the slums. We couldn't believe our luck. The king himself, reduced to this." "You've found me," I said. "Congratulations. But I'm dying anyway. Your work is already done." "We prefer certainty." They attacked together. I fought with everything I had left. 900 years of experience compressed into a body that could barely hold it. I broke the first one's arm, shattered the second one's jaw, but there were 3 of them. And I was so slow, so weak. A blade found my side. Another opened my shoulder. The pain was extraordinary, not because of the wounds themselves, but because my body no longer remembered how to stop feeling it. I fell to my knees. The gray-haired hunter stood over me, stake in hand. "Any last words, King?" I looked past him to where Mara stood frozen. I wanted to tell her to look away, to spare herself this sight. But before I could speak, she moved. She grabbed a broken chair leg from the floor and swung it with all her strength against the back of the hunter's head. The crack echoed through the library. He stumbled, momentarily stunned. The other 2 turned toward her, their expressions shifting from surprise to murderous intent. "No," I rasped. I tried to stand, to protect her, but my body wouldn't obey. Mara faced them with the chair leg raised, her gray eyes blazing with a courage that seemed to come from some deep, inexhaustible well. "Leave him alone," she said. "Girl, you've made a fatal mistake," one of them growled. "So have you," she replied. They moved toward her. I screamed her name, the first time I had raised my voice in decades. I tried to summon what little power remained in me, tried to reach into that ancient well of strength, but there was nothing there. Nothing but emptiness and the slow dissolution of centuries. Then something extraordinary happened. Mara moved, not with a mortal's speed, but with something else, pure determination perhaps, or the kind of desperate strength that comes only when protecting another. She struck the nearest hunter across the face with the chair leg, then kicked the second in the knee with a precision that suggested military training I had never suspected. But she was still only human. The gray-haired hunter had recovered. He seized her from behind, his arm around her throat. "Shoulda run," he hissed. I watched in horror as he raised the silver blade to her throat. Everything in me, every instinct, every buried fragment of power, every last shred of will surged forward in one desperate final effort. I moved, faster than I had moved in years, faster than I had any right to move in my condition. I crossed the distance between us and drove my small knife into the hunter's side, between his ribs, angled upward toward his heart. Not to kill. I had long ago forsworn killing, but to disable. He released Mara and fell, gasping. The other 2 grabbed their companion and, sensing the shift in the room, the arrival of something they had not anticipated, retreated. "This isn't over," the gray-haired one managed. "We'll be back." Then they were gone, dragging their wounded companion into the night. I collapsed. The exertion had cost me everything. I could feel my body beginning to shut down, feel the slow internal hemorrhaging of whatever force had kept me animated for 9 centuries. The silver wounds burned like stars inside my flesh. Mara knelt beside me. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. Theron, look at me." I opened my eyes. Her face swam above me, concerned and frightened, and so beautifully, achingly alive. "What are you?" she whispered. "What were they talking about? What did they call you?" "King," I managed. "Of nothing, of shadows." "That's not an answer." "I know." I tried to smile. "I'm sorry you saw this. Sorry I brought danger to you." "You didn't bring anything. I chose to stay." Her hands were on my wounds now, trying futilely to stop the bleeding. "We need to get you to a hospital." "They can't help me." "Then what can?" I looked at her. really looked, perhaps for the first time, at her gray eyes and her dark hair and the strength in her face, the quiet resilience that had drawn me to her from the beginning. At this homeless woman who had nothing, who was herself barely surviving, who had nevertheless risked everything to save a stranger. No, not a stranger. Somewhere in these weeks of quiet conversation, she had become something more, something I had not allowed myself in centuries. Blood, I said. She didn't recoil, didn't flinch. She simply nodded as if I had confirmed something she had already suspected. You're a vampire. I am, I'm dying. How do I help you? You can't. I'm too far gone. The fate is too advanced. I tried to reach up to touch her face, but my hand fell back. But thank you for trying. There has to be something. Her voice was fierce now, urgent. You said blood, so take mine. I can't. I won't. Why not? Because it wouldn't just heal me, Mara. It would bind you to me. You would become part of my world, of its darkness. You would be tied to a dying creature. I won't do that to you. That should be my choice. Your choice is clouded by compassion. My choice is mine, she said, and in that moment, she reminded me of every fierce warrior, every stubborn scholar, every person throughout history who had stood their ground when the world tried to move them. You saved my life just now. Let me save yours. I didn't save your life. I just prolonged the inevitable. They'll come back. Then we'll face them together. She pulled a small knife from her pocket, a utility blade, worn but sharp. Tell me how to do this. I should have refused, should have held firm. But 900 years of loneliness, of slow dissolution, of wandering the margins without purpose or connection, had worn me down to this. A creature desperate not for blood, but for the simple human miracle of being seen, being known, being chosen. You'll regret this, I whispered. Let me decide what I regret. I told her what to do. She made a small cut on her wrist, holding it over my mouth. The blood fell, and I tasted it. Warm, vital, electric with life. It was like drinking sunlight after centuries of darkness, like coming home after 1,000 years of wandering. I felt my wounds begin to close, felt power, not my full strength, but something enough, returning to my limbs. The silver burns stopped. Screaming, the internal hemorrhaging slowed, stopped. I could breathe again, could think again, but more than that, I felt her. The bond forming between us, that ancient and terrible magic that connected vampire to mortal. I could sense her heartbeat, her emotions, the bright, fierce core of her that had survived whatever had brought her to this place. And I understood, with sudden and absolute certainty, that I loved her. Had loved her perhaps from that first moment when she looked at me and saw not a monster or a king, but simply a lonely man who remembered too much. When I had drunk enough, not too much, never too much, I pulled away. She swayed slightly and I caught her, holding her steady. You should rest, I said. You've lost blood. I'm fine. She looked at me, at the wounds that had already closed to thin red lines. You're healing. You saved me. We saved each other. We stayed like that for a long moment, in the darkness of the abandoned library, surrounded by forgotten books and the sleeping forms of the forgotten homeless. Two people who had been invisible to the world, now visible to each other. What happens now? She asked. I didn't have an answer. The hunters would return. My kind, if they learned I still lived, would come to reclaim me or destroy me. And Mara, bound to me now through blood, was in danger simply by proximity to my existence. But for the first time in decades, I felt something other than resignation. I felt purpose. Now, I said, we survive. The dawn was still hours away. We had time, and perhaps that was all anyone ever truly had. Time and the choices we made within it. In the centuries of my existence, I had learned many truths, but Mara, this homeless woman who had saved a dying vampire king, with nothing but courage and compassion, had taught me the most important one, that sometimes the most powerful magic is not ancient or supernatural. Sometimes it's simply the choice to reach out across the darkness and say, you are not alone. And in that moment, neither of us was. The bond changed everything and nothing. In the days that followed the attack, we remained in the library, but now I stood guard while Mara slept, and she watched over me during my weakest hours near dawn. The blood bond hummed between us like a string of music, subtle but always present. I could feel her now, her hunger, her exhaustion, the quicksilver currents of her thoughts. And she, I suspected, could feel me too. The weight I carried, the centuries folded inside my chest like ancient letters. Tell me, she said one night when the others were sleeping and we sat together in the reading room. Tell me who you were before. I had not spoken of my past to anyone in over 200 years, but she had earned the truth, had paid for it in blood and courage. I was born in the year 1082, I began, in a land that is now part of Turkey. My father was a minor Byzantine noble, my mother the daughter of a scholar. I was the youngest of 4 sons, which meant I was destined for the church or the university. I chose the university. I paused, remembering. I studied in Constantinople in Alexandria. I learned languages, philosophy, astronomy. I believed that knowledge could perfect humanity, could bring us closer to the divine. What changed? War, the Crusades. I was traveling in the Holy Land when my caravan was attacked. I was left for dead in the desert, wounded and dying. My voice had gone flat, the way it always did when I approached this part of the story. He found me there, an ancient vampire, one of the oldest. I never learned his true name. He said I reminded him of someone he had loved and lost, that my mind was too valuable to let die, so he gave me a choice, death or eternity. And you chose eternity. I was 26 years old. I didn't understand what I was choosing. I thought it would be an adventure, a continuation of my studies across infinite time. I didn't understand that eternity is not expansion, but compression, that each year would weigh heavier than the last, that I would watch everyone I loved wither and die while I remained unchanged. Mara was quiet, listening with that stillness she possessed, the quality that made people want to confess their secrets. My maker, my sire, taught me to control the hunger, to move through the world unseen, to use my gifts wisely. He gave me 300 years of companionship. Then one morning, I woke and he was simply gone. Left me a note saying he had gone to watch the sunrise one last time, that he had grown tired of the eternal night. I looked at my hands. I was alone. So you built a court. You said you were called king. Much later, in the 14th century, after the Black Death, when the world was broken and remade, other vampires sought me out. I was old enough, powerful enough to lead. For 200 years, I ruled a court of immortals. We had wealth, influence, protected territories. We enforced laws among our kind, kept the balance between vampire and human. I was good at it. I had the temperament, patient, diplomatic, firm when necessary. What made you leave? I grew tired of the games, the politics, the endless maneuvering for power and position. And I realized I was becoming something I didn't want to be, a creature so removed from humanity that I could no longer remember why any of it mattered. I met her eyes. So I abdicated, walked away from my crown, my court, my power. I've been wandering ever since. For how long? 30 years, which is nothing to someone like me, but everything to the hunters. They never forgot, never forgave. The old king, reduced to living among the homeless, it must have seemed like justice to them. Or an opportunity, Mara said darkly. That too. She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, what about love? In 900 years, you must have loved someone. The question struck deeper than I expected. Many someones, I admitted. Some human, some vampire, some for years, some for decades. But immortality poisons love. Either they die and you continue, or they become like you, and the love curdles into resentment over centuries. I learned to protect myself, to keep distance, to care, but never too much. Until now, I looked at her. Until now. The admission hung between us, fragile as spider silk. She didn't smile or blush or look away. She simply nodded, as if I had confirmed something she already knew. I need to tell you my story too, she said. If we're bound together, you should know. Only if you want to. I want to. She took a breath. I was born in Montana on a Blackfeet reservation. My mother was Blackfeet. My father was white, a teacher. They loved each other, but it was complicated. The reservation, my father's family, everyone had opinions. I grew up between worlds, never quite fitting in either. I was good at school, really good. Got a scholarship to Columbia, studied library science. I wanted to preserve indigenous knowledge, to bridge those same worlds I'd grown up between. Her voice was steady, but I could feel the pain beneath it, transmitted through the bond. I graduated, got a job at a university library in Seattle, met a man, fell in love, got married. We bought a house, talked about children. It was everything I thought I wanted. Then he started drinking, got mean. The abuse was... She paused, choosing words carefully. Gradual at first, emotional, financial, then physical. I left him, but he found me, violated the restraining order. The police were sympathetic, but useless. One night, he broke into my apartment, and I fought back. He fell down the stairs. He died? He was in a coma for 3 months. When he woke up, he told the police I pushed him. His family had money, lawyers. My public defender was overworked. They painted me as the aggressor, said I was mentally unstable. I was acquitted but fired from my job. My reputation was destroyed. I couldn't find work, couldn't afford the apartment. Started living in my car, then the car died and... She gestured around the library. Here I am. I'm sorry. Don't be. I survived. That's what matters. She met my eyes. But you understand now why I wasn't afraid when those men attacked you. After everything I've been through, death stopped being the worst thing. Sometimes the worst thing is surviving without purpose, without connection, without mattering to anyone. You matter to me. I know, I can feel it. She placed her hand over her heart. Through here, the bond. It's strange and terrifying and also the most secure I've felt in years. We sat in silence, two souls who had been broken by different centuries, different circumstances, but similar loneliness. I reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were calloused, cold. I warmed them between my palms. The hunters will return, I said quietly. And when they do, they'll be prepared. More of them, better weapons. They won't underestimate me again. Then we leave. And go where? Anywhere. You've been wandering for 30 years. Let me wander with you. She squeezed my hand. I have nothing tying me here. No family, no job, no home. But with you, I have purpose. I can help you survive, protect you during the day, be your eyes and ears in the mortal world. You'd give up your life for this, for me? I already gave up my life. That person who had a career and a marriage and dreams, she's gone. I'm what remains, and I choose this. I choose you. The simplicity of it undid me. After 9 centuries of complexity, of careful calculation, of protecting myself through distance and detachment, here was someone offering uncomplicated choice. Not because I was powerful or ancient or a king, but because I was simply myself, flawed and fading and trying to survive. Then we leave tonight, I said. I know places we can go, safe houses from my old court, places so remote even the hunters won't find us. No, I looked at her in surprise. No more running, she said firmly. You've been running for 30 years. That's not living, it's just slow dying. We need to do this differently. What do you suggest? We fight, not just to survive, but to live. You said you abdicated your throne, walked away from your power. What if you reclaimed it? Not the court, not the politics, but the strength. Use this second chance not to hide, but to be who you truly are. And who was that? A protector, a scholar, someone who bridges worlds. She leaned forward, her gray eyes intense. You said your court kept the balance between vampires and humans. Maybe that's what the world needs again. Maybe that's your purpose. I wanted to dismiss it, to explain all the reasons it was impossible. But something in her words resonated with a part of me I had buried decades ago, the part that had once believed in meaning, in purpose, in using power not for domination, but for preservation. It would be dangerous, I said slowly, for both of us. Everything worth doing is dangerous. The hunters will keep hunting unless we give them a reason to stop, or unless we make them understand that you're not their enemy. I'm a vampire. To them, that's reason enough. Then we change their minds, or we remove them as a threat. But we do it together, and we do it with our eyes open. She smiled slightly. Besides, you made me your queen. Don't I get a say in how we rule? I didn't make you. I stopped, looked at her. I never said that. You didn't have to. The bond did. I can feel it. You're the king, and I don't know the word. Consort, partner, whatever it is, I'm not some mortal you saved. I'm your equal in this, Theron. Treat me like it. And there it was, the fierce dignity that had drawn me to her from the beginning. She was homeless, human, vulnerable in a dozen ways. But she possessed something that centuries could not diminish or destroy, an unshakable sense of self-worth, a core of steel that no circumstance could bend. I had ruled a court for 200 years. I had commanded powerful vampires, negotiated with ancient entities, enforced laws that governed immortals. But I had never had a true partner, never had someone who stood beside me not as subject or supplicant, but as equal. Very well, I said. My queen. She grinned. It transformed her face, making her look younger, mischievous. So, where do we start? We start by making you stronger. The bond gives you some protection, but not enough. I'll teach you to fight, to defend yourself against supernatural threats. And we'll need resources, money, weapons, information. I still have some contacts from my old life. It's time I called in a few favors. And the hunters? We send them a message. Make it clear that attacking me means attacking both of us, that we're not prey anymore. I squeezed her hand. But first, you need rest. Real rest, not sleeping on the floor of an abandoned library. There's a hotel 3 blocks from here that asks no questions. We'll get a room. With what money? I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt in decades. I'm 900 years old, Mara. Do you think I wandered penniless? I have accounts all over the world, identities I can access. I chose to live like this because I was ready to die. But if we're going to live, truly live, then we do it properly. We left the library before dawn, slipping out into the cold November air. I could feel the sun's approach like a pressure behind my eyes, but I had enough strength now, enough of Mara's vital blood in my system, to endure another hour of darkness. The homeless stirred as we passed. Old Jenny looked up from her nest of blankets. Leaving us, Theron? For a while, I said. Take care of yourself, Jenny. You too, brother, you too. The hotel was small, shabby, but clean. I paid cash for a week, and the clerk didn't even look up from his phone. We climbed to the 3rd floor to a room with a window facing east. You'll need to close the curtains before dawn, Mara said as I unlocked the door. I know. The room was sparse. A bed, a dresser, a bathroom with a shower that sputtered. But to Mara, who hadn't slept in a bed in months, it must have seemed like luxury. She stood in the center of the room, just taking it in. Shower first, I said. I'll make some calls, arrange for supplies. Tomorrow, we'll get you proper clothes, a phone, everything you need. What about you? What do you need? Answers, information about who sent those hunters, whether others are coming. And I need to reach out to some of my kind, see who's still alive, who might be willing to help. Do you think they will? Help, I mean? Some. Others will see this as an opportunity to challenge me, to claim they're stronger than the old king. But I know how to navigate those waters. I turned to face her fully. Mara, are you sure about this? Once we start down this path, there's no going back. You'll be tied not just to me, but to my entire world. The danger, the politics, the darkness. I've been living in darkness, she said quietly. At least this darkness has purpose. And I'll face it with someone who sees me, really sees me. That's worth everything. She went to shower, and I stood at the window, looking out at the city as it slowly woke. The sky was lightening in the east, gray and rose and gold. I would need to close the curtains soon, to retreat from the light that would burn me. But for now, I simply watched. 943 years. I had watched civilizations rise and fall, had seen wonders and horrors beyond mortal comprehension. I had loved and lost, ruled and wandered, fought and survived. And I had thought, truly thought, that I was done. That the only thing left was to fade gracefully into nothingness. But Mara had changed everything. With her courage and her choice and her fierce, unbreakable spirit, she had given me something I thought lost forever. Hope. The shower shut off. I heard her moving around the bathroom, then the door opened. She emerged wrapped in a towel, her dark hair dripping, her gray eyes finding me by the window. You should sleep, I said. So should you. I don't sleep much anymore. Then lie down with me anyway. We have a long day ahead, planning our war. She smiled. Come on, Your Majesty, keep your queen company. I closed the curtains, plunging the room into twilight. Then I lay beside her on the bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. She curled against my side, her head on my shoulder, her warmth seeping through my cold skin. Theron, she murmured, already half asleep. Yes? Thank you for not dying. I closed my eyes, feeling something inside my chest that might have been my heart, which I had long believed a dried and useless thing, beginning, impossibly, to beat again. Thank you for saving me, I whispered, but she was already asleep, her breathing deep and steady, her presence in the bond a warm, constant glow. I lay awake, holding her, watching over her the way she had watched over me. And I understood finally what I had been looking for in 30 years of wandering. Not death, not oblivion, not an end, but a beginning. Outside, the sun rose over the city, and I did not burn. Inside this small room, in the arms of a woman who had every reason to hate the world, but chose courage instead, I found something I had not felt since that day in 1108 when I died and was reborn. A reason to face tomorrow. Whatever came next, hunters, enemies, the judgment of my kind, we would face it together. King and queen, vampire and mortal, two souls who had saved each other in the only way that truly mattered, by choosing to be seen, to be known, to be loved, despite all the reasons they shouldn't be. The story was far from over, but for the first time in centuries, I wanted to see how it ended. 3 weeks passed. In that time, we transformed from two homeless wanderers into something else. Not quite an army, but a force nonetheless. I made my calls, reached out through old networks, encrypted channels, contacts I hadn't touched in decades. Some of my former court had survived, scattered across the world, but still respectful of my authority. They owed me debts, and I called them in. Money began flowing into accounts. Information arrived through anonymous emails. Safe houses were offered, and weapons. Oh, the weapons. I taught Mara to fight properly. She had some training from her youth, but I gave her 9 centuries of accumulated knowledge. How to kill a vampire, silver, sunlight, beheading, stake through the heart. How to defend against supernatural speed, where to strike to disable without killing. She learned quickly with a fierce dedication that reminded me of the greatest warriors I had known. Every evening, in the hotel room or in abandoned warehouses I rented under false names, we trained. I was careful never to hurt her, but I pushed her hard. Again, I would say as she stumbled back from a failed defense. I can't, she'd gasp. You can. You must. And she would rise, set her jaw, and come at me again. Her determination was extraordinary. Within 2 weeks, she could anticipate my movements, could counter attacks that would have bewildered trained fighters. But more than physical training, I taught her about my world, the hierarchies of vampire society, the laws that governed us, the territories and courts that existed in shadows, parallel to human civilization, the things to fear and the things that feared us. There are older things than vampires, I told her one night. Things that predate civilization. We're not the apex predators we pretend to be. That's weirdly comforting, she said. I also fed, not from her. I had sworn not to make that mistake again, but from blood banks, from willing donors I paid handsomely, from sources that didn't endanger innocence. My strength returned fully, then surpassed what it had been in decades. The bond with Mara was nourishing me in ways I didn't fully understand, as if her vitality and purpose were revitalizing not just my body, but my will to exist. She thrived too. With regular meals, a safe place to sleep, and a purpose beyond mere survival, she blossomed. The haunted look left her eyes, replaced by a fierce light. She smiled more, laughed occasionally, began to dream again about futures beyond the next day. I've been researching, she told me one evening, her laptop open on the bed, looking into the hunters who attacked us. The leader with the gray hair, his name is Marcus Thorne. Former Special Forces, now runs a private organization dedicated to hunting supernatural threats. How extensive is his organization? Bigger than I'd like. Sells in 12 countries, maybe 40 active hunters, with hundreds of informants and support personnel. They're well-funded, well-trained, and obsessed with you specifically. You're listed as Priority 1 target on their internal database. You hacked their database? She grinned. I was a librarian, remember? We know how to find information. And I may have picked up some skills during my time on the streets. You learned to be resourceful. My brilliant queen, I murmured. So, here's what I'm thinking, she continued, her expression growing serious. We can't run forever, and we can't fight them all. But we can change the narrative. Right now, you're a monster to them. The big bad vampire king who needs to be destroyed. What if we show them something different? Like what? Like a vampire who protects humans, who keeps worse things at bay, who maintains the balance you talked about. She pulled up a file on her screen. Look at this. In the past 6 months, there have been 17 suspicious deaths in this city alone. Drained of blood, bodies left in alleys. The hunters think it's you. It's not. I know. Which means someone else is hunting here. Someone reckless. Someone violating the laws your court established. I leaned forward, studying the file. She was right. The kills were messy, public. The kind of feeding that would expose our kind to human authorities. It was exactly the sort of thing my court had been created to prevent. If we stop whoever's doing this, Mara said, if we save human lives and show the hunters that you're not their enemy, they might reconsider their vendetta. Exactly. I was quiet for a moment, thinking. It was a risk. Exposing myself, engaging with the very hunters who wanted me dead. But it was also an opportunity, a chance to reclaim not the crown, but the purpose that had once defined me. We'll need proof, I said finally. Evidence of both the kills and our intervention. We'll need to catch this rogue vampire in the act. I've been mapping the attacks. There's a pattern. All within a 3-mile radius, all between midnight and 3 a.m., all on weekends. Whoever it is, they're hunting a specific territory. And they'll hunt again. This weekend. I'd bet my life on it. Don't bet your life, I said. That's mine to protect now. She reached out and took my hand. Partners, remember? Partners. We spent the next 3 days preparing. I reached out through my networks, asking if anyone knew of unauthorized vampires in the city. The answers came back quickly. Yes, there was someone. A young vampire, maybe 50 years old, who had been turned and abandoned by their sire. They'd been surviving on the streets, losing control, becoming more feral with each kill. 50 years old, Mara said when I told her. They're just a child compared to you. Which makes them more dangerous, not less. Young vampires are all hunger and instinct. They haven't learned control, haven't developed the restraint that comes with age. Can you help them? The question surprised me. Most people would have asked if I could kill them, but Mara thought first of salvation. Perhaps, I said, if they're willing to listen, if they haven't gone too far into the hunger. Saturday night, we positioned ourselves in the hunting ground, an industrial area near the docks, where the homeless and the addicted and the desperate wandered like ghosts. Perfect hunting for a vampire who didn't care about concealment. Mara wore dark clothes and carried weapons. A silver knife, a wooden stake, a small vial of holy water I'd acquired from a sympathetic priest. I carried nothing but centuries of experience and newly restored power. We waited. The hours crawled past. Midnight came and went. I could feel the city around us, the thrumming pulse of millions of hearts, the vast and different machinery of human civilization grinding on above and around and below us. Then I felt it. Another vampire, young and hungry and moving fast. I touched Mara's shoulder, pointed, she nodded, we followed, through alleys, across abandoned lots, deeper into the industrial wasteland. The vampire was stalking someone, a homeless man who had passed out near a dumpster. Easy prey, helpless. I moved before the vampire could strike. One moment I was beside Mara, the next I was between the vampire and their target, my hand around the young vampire's throat. Stop, I said. The vampire was a woman, perhaps 25 in appearance, with matted blonde hair and eyes gone red with bloodlust. She snarled, tried to break free. I held firm. Listen to me, I said, using the voice, the power that had once commanded courts. You don't want to do this. Hungry, she gasped. So hungry. Can't think, can't stop, need... I know, I understand, but this will only make it worse. I caught her gaze, held it. What's your name? Sarah, I think, was Sarah. Sarah, I can help you, teach you to control the hunger, to feed without killing, but you have to choose, right now, control or destruction. Behind me I heard voices, the hunters, arriving exactly on schedule. Mara had sent them an anonymous tip about the location, gambling that they would come, that they would see this moment. Sarah heard them too. Terror replaced hunger in her eyes. They'll kill me. Not if I protect you, but you have to surrender. No more killing. She looked at me, at the homeless man still passed out and breathing, at the hunters emerging from the shadows with weapons raised. Then, miraculously, she went limp in my grip. Help me, she whispered. I turned to face Marcus Thorne and his hunters. They had crossbows loaded with silver bolts, stakes at the ready. But they hesitated, seeing Sarah restrained, seeing the human alive. I am Theron, I said, my voice carrying in the cold night air. You know me. You call me king, and I am here to enforce the laws of my kind. By protecting a killer, Marcus demanded. By stopping one. This vampire is young, abandoned, without training. She's been killing because no one taught her a better way. That ends tonight. So you'll just take her? Let her keep killing somewhere else? No, I'll take responsibility for her, train her, ensure she never kills again, and if she does, I'll execute her myself. I looked at each hunter in turn. This is what I do. This is what I've always done. Maintain the balance, protect your kind from mine when necessary. You hunt me because you think I'm a threat, but I'm the only thing keeping worse threats at bay. Convenient speech, Marcus said, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. Mara stepped forward then, deliberately putting herself between the hunters and me. He's telling the truth. I've seen the bodies this vampire left. 17 dead in 6 months. Theron stopped her before she could make it 18. He's not your enemy. And who are you? Marcus asked. Someone who was there when you attacked him. Someone who watched him spare your lives when he could have killed you all. Her voice was steady, fearless. He's powerful enough to destroy you, but he chose mercy. Maybe it's time you chose it too. The standoff stretched. I could feel the tension, the calculation happening behind Marcus's eyes. Finally, he lowered his crossbow. If she kills again, he said, I'm coming for both of you. Agreed. The hunters retreated, slowly, weapons still raised, but retreating. When they were gone, I released Sarah. She collapsed to the ground, shaking. Thank you, she sobbed. Thank you, thank you. Don't thank me yet. You have centuries of hunger ahead, centuries of learning control. It doesn't get easier. I knelt beside her. But you don't have to face it alone. That was my mistake. When I was turned, I was eventually abandoned too. I won't do that to you. Over the next hour, I explained the basics. How to find willing donors, how to feed without killing, the resources available, old networks of vampires who maintain the balance. I gave her contacts, money, a phone. Find the vampires in Prague, I told her. Tell them Theron sent you. They'll take you in, train you properly. Why are you doing this? She asked. Because someone should have done it for me. Because every young vampire abandoned to hunger becomes a monster, and I'm tired of creating monsters. I stood. Now go, and remember, you owe me a life, the homeless man's. If you kill again, that debt becomes forfeit, and I will find you. She fled into the night, a young vampire given a second chance. Mara and I stood alone in the alley. The man near the dumpster stirred, groaned, then settled back into sleep. He would wake with no memory of how close he came to death. Do you think she'll listen? Mara asked. Maybe, maybe not. But we gave her a choice, which is more than most young vampires get. And the hunters? They'll watch, they'll wait, but we've planted a seed of doubt, given them reason to see me as something other than a monster. I took her hand. You were brilliant, by the way. Fearless. I learned from the best. We walked back through the city as false dawn began to gray the eastern sky. Not to the hotel. I had purchased an apartment building the week before, a small property that gave us security and privacy. The entire top floor was ours, windows treated to block UV light, every entrance secured. Our kingdom was small, but it was ours. Over the following months, we built something remarkable. Word spread through both vampire and hunter networks. The old king had returned, but changed. He wasn't building another court, wasn't claiming territory or demanding tribute. Instead, he was doing something far more radical, teaching young vampires to coexist with humanity, intervening in supernatural conflicts, maintaining peace. Mara was essential to all of it. She became the human face of our operation, the bridge between worlds. She negotiated with hunters, found abandoned vampires, researched threats, managed our growing network of contacts. Her intelligence and compassion opened doors my power alone never could. And slowly, grudgingly, the hunters began to work with us. Not all of them. Marcus Thorne remained suspicious, watched us constantly. But others saw the value in what we were doing. Fewer humans died. Fewer vampires went rogue. The balance held. Sarah thrived in Prague, sending grateful messages every few weeks. Other young vampires began seeking us out, asking for guidance. We couldn't save them all, but we saved some. And through it all, the bond between Mara and me deepened. What had begun as survival became partnership, and partnership became love. Real love. The kind that endured not because it was easy, but because it was chosen again and again in small moments and large ones. I taught her everything I knew. Languages, history, philosophy, the accumulated wisdom of 9 centuries. She taught me what I had forgotten, how to laugh, how to hope, how to live in the moment rather than drowning in the weight of the past. 6 months after that night at the docks, I asked her formally. We were on the roof of our building, watching the city lights spread beneath us like stars. Mara, I said, you saved my life. You gave me purpose, companionship, love. You made me remember why immortality might be a gift rather than a curse. Are you going somewhere with this? She asked, smiling. I want to offer you a choice, not because you're bound to me, not because you owe me anything, but because you are the only person in 900 years who has truly been my equal. I took her hand. I can make you immortal, truly immortal, not just blood bonded, but transformed. You would become like me, powerful, timeless, forever. We could spend eternity together, building this new world we've started. She was quiet for a long time, looking out over the city. When she finally spoke, her voice was thoughtful. I need to ask you something first, she said. If I say no, if I choose to remain human and mortal, would you still love me? Would you stay with me through my natural life, even knowing I'll die and leave you alone again? Yes, I said without hesitation. I would treasure every year, every day, and when you died, I would carry you with me forever. Good answer. She turned to me, her gray eyes serious. I need time to think. This isn't a decision to make lightly. Immortality means giving up things too. The possibility of children, of growing old, of a natural ending. I need to be sure. Take all the time you need. I've had 9 centuries. I can wait. She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. Thank you for giving me the choice. Thank you for teaching me that choices matter." We stayed like that until dawn, two souls balanced between worlds, between mortal and immortal, between past and future. And I realized that whatever Mara decided, we had already achieved something remarkable. We had found each other in the darkness and created light. The story could end a dozen ways. She might choose immortality, and we might rule together for centuries, king and queen of shadows protecting the balance. She might choose mortality, and I might love her fiercely for her brief human years, then carry her memory into eternity. She might choose something else entirely, some third path I couldn't imagine. But in that moment, on that roof, with the city breathing below us and the stars wheeling above, the ending didn't matter. What mattered was the choice, the love, the partnership we had built from nothing, from two homeless souls who had saved each other in the only way that truly counts, by choosing to be seen, by choosing to be known, by choosing against all reason and all odds to hope. 1 year later, Mara gave me her answer. We were back where it began, the abandoned library on 7th Street. I had purchased it quietly, had been slowly renovating it, turning it back into what it was meant to be, a sanctuary for stories, for knowledge, for those seeking refuge from the world. "I want to show you something," I said, leading her through the main room. The shelves were filling with books again. The windows had been repaired. The heating system worked. In a few months, it would reopen. A free public library staffed by volunteers, open to everyone, but especially to those whom other institutions turned away. The homeless, the addicted, the forgotten. "This is what you've been working on," Mara said, looking around with wonder. "All those mysterious trips, all that money disappearing from our accounts." "A king needs a kingdom," I said. "This is mine, yours, ours. Not a court of vampires, but a court of human knowledge, open to all who need it." She walked through the stacks, trailing her fingers over the spines of books, smiling. When she reached the reading room, our reading room, where we had first really talked, she stopped. There, on the window ledge, sat two objects, the water-damaged copy of Ovid's Metamorphoses. I had been reading a year ago, and beside it, a small velvet box. Mara picked up the box, opened it. Inside was a ring, simple silver band, engraved with words in ancient Greek. "I Aristeuein," I explained. "From the Iliad. Always to excel, to be the best you can be, to strive, to choose, to live." "Theron, it's not a proposal," I said quickly. "Or rather, it is, but not for marriage. It's a promise, a vow. Whichever path you choose, mortal or immortal, I will be with you. I will love you. I will honor your choice, your agency, your right to determine your own existence." She slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "I've made my choice," she said. My dead heart clenched. "And I choose both. I don't understand." She turned to face me fully. "I choose to remain human, to live a mortal life, to grow old, to experience all the seasons of existence. I choose that because it's precious, because limitation gives life meaning, because I want to know what it's like to become an old woman who's lived fully." I nodded, trying to hide my grief. I had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that she would choose eternity with me. "But," she continued, "I also choose you, for all the years I have. And when those years end, if you still love me, if you still want me, then I choose to be transformed, to return to you immortal, to spend eternity as your partner, not as someone who avoided death out of fear, but as someone who lived life fully first, then chose forever, eyes wide open." The elegance of it struck me breathless. She would not simply leap into immortality. She would earn it by living fully as a human first. And I would have the gift of loving her in her mortality, of knowing every wrinkle and gray hair was a testament to time well spent. "That's a long time to wait," I said, my voice rough with emotion. "For someone 900 years old, it's nothing." She stepped close and put her hands on my chest. "But it means everything. It means I'm choosing you not once but twice. As a human who loves a vampire, and later as an immortal who chose that love consciously, completely, with full knowledge of the cost. And if, when the time comes, you change your mind, if you decide you want a peaceful mortal death, then you let me go, and you carry on, knowing you were loved truly, if briefly." She smiled. "But I won't change my mind. I know myself. I know you. This is what I want, all of it. The mortal years and the immortal ones. The complete experience." I pulled her close, holding her as if she might vanish. "You are extraordinary. I learned from the best." We stood there in the reading room, the twilight pressing against the repaired windows, Two beings from different worlds who had found each other in the margins and chosen something better than survival, chosen love and life, and the exquisite pain and beauty of both. Outside, the city went about its evening business, oblivious to the small miracle happening in the abandoned library. Marcus Thorne and his hunters patrolled the streets, still watching us, still suspicious, but beginning, slowly, to accept that we were allies rather than enemies. Young vampires found their way to us, seeking guidance. Humans in need found refuge in our growing network of safe spaces. The balance held, and would hold for decades, for centuries, for however long we maintained it. But in that moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was Mara's heartbeat against my chest, her warmth in my arms, the ring on her finger catching the last light of day. What mattered was the choice we had both made, to be seen, to be known, to be loved. The old king and his homeless queen, building a kingdom of compassion in the ruins of the forgotten city. It was not the story I had imagined when I first decided to let myself fade into nothing. It was better, it was real, it was earned. And as night fell fully and the stars emerged above the city, I understood finally what 943 years had been teaching me, that immortality without love was merely existence, but mortality lived fully, with courage and compassion and connection, was eternal. We would have decades together, Mara and I, then a parting, then an eternity. The thought of her eventual death still ached, but it was a sweet ache, the kind that comes from knowing something precious is temporary and therefore infinitely valuable. "Come," I said, taking her hand. "Let me show you the rest of what we've built. The library is just the beginning. We have so much work to do, so many years ahead of us." "Not enough years," she said, "but exactly the right amount." And hand in hand, king and queen, vampire and mortal, we walked out of the reading room and into our future, whatever shape it took, whatever trials it held, facing it together as partners, as equals, as two souls who had saved each other, and, in doing so, had learned to save themselves. The city breathed around us, full of darkness and light, danger and beauty, the eternal dance of life and death. And we walked through it unafraid, because we had each other, and we had chosen this, consciously, completely, irrevocably. Chosen hope over despair, connection over isolation, love over the long, lonely silence of immortal solitude. The story continues, even now, in the shadows and the spaces between heartbeats. The library thrives, the balance holds. Young vampires learn control, hunters learn discrimination. And at the center of it all, a 900-year-old king and his mortal queen, building something that will outlast them both. A legacy not of power, but of compassion. And when her mortal years finally end, when she returns to me transformed and eternal, we will begin again. The next chapter of a story that was never meant to end with loneliness, but with two souls walking into forever, hand in hand, eyes wide open, hearts, living or not, beating in synchrony. Until then, we live. Fully, fiercely, gratefully. And that, in the end, is the only immortality that truly matters.